ready to
Bomba! Welcome back to Bomba Live, the show you've been waiting for. Thank you so much for joining us. This show is Ray Collazo. I'm not on the top of Philadelphia like I am sometimes, but back at the home Bomba Live studios. But I want to make sure we got our Thanksgiving episode out before the holidays. If you're watching this during the holiday season, please, from myself, all of the Bomba Live contributors and the greater Bomba Live familia, we hope everyone has a wonderful Thanksgiving and a peaceful and joyful holiday season. On this episode of Bomba Live, the show you've been waiting for, later on in the show, I'm going to get into the political headlines and kind of give you some my thumbnail sketch of where we're at a little less than 11 months from election 2024 D-Day. Pretty important day in our history coming up in about 11 months or so. And we will have a Bomba Live segment, a sports segment, which are always a popular segment to touch base on a few of the sports headlines impacting the Bomba Live sports world. But first, I wanted to share a brief Thanksgiving message out to our Bomba Live family, and share with you that on a story and some things that have been impacting me personally, sort of I reflect on as we approach Thanksgiving in the coming hours. And so last Saturday, I did what I always do. I watched Miss Universe. And so that seems like kind of an old school thing to do. And, some would argue not the most PC thing to do. But I've always watched Miss Universe because that's what my mom did and does when she's available. And, I get my love of sports from my dad and my grandfather on my dad's side. But I get that real competitive Philly passion for it from my mom, because my mom views Miss Universe and Puerto Rico and, the same way that we, as crazy Philly people view the Eagles. You know what I mean? Like we're all in. And the other países que siempre batallando nosotros, Venezuela, Colombia, they're like the Cowboys and the Giants. For my mom, they're our bitter rivals. Friendly, I get in some way, but not really. And so I was watching on Saturday, and typically what I would do is either I'm watching on my mom, which I did years back in the days, or I would like text her, oh, she's 10, she's in the top 10, she's in the top 5, she's doing good, what have you. Whoever the Miss Puerto Rico contestant was. And it made me sad to realize in the middle of the show that my mom really isn't really up to it mentally to sort of interact on text like that. My mom, for people that don't know, Sonia Collazo has been experiencing dementia symptoms. Has basically had dementia for about 5-6 years now, and so I would say she's still in the relatively, somewhere in that mild to moderate stage. She knows who we are. She has a good long-term memory of her life. She knows who she is. She can take care of herself. She's really in good shape physically. But she one of the things, kind of being on top of her phone and texting with us is something that kind of has fallen off over the last year or so. And so, that moment when I wanted to text her and realize that she probably wouldn't be of mind to get back to me, made me really sad. And just thinking about the fact that my mom isn't where she used to be mentally, it was really sad going into Thanksgiving, the holidays, and she'll be with us and we'll be with her. And she's still, like I said, very cognizant of her life and who she is. And, but it's not the same. And, her short-term memory. And I know people that are dealing with loved ones and caregivers for loved ones that have dementia can relate to that. And so as I kind of reflect on the sadness of that, and then, but first of all, be incredibly grateful she's still with us. And I know many of you, unfortunately, can't say that about your parents and some of your most dearest loved ones. So I'm super grateful for that. And the fact that she's doesn't suffer in a pain way. She's a healthy person and doesn't live with much day-to-day pain. It occurs to me that I have to also be thankful for everything she's given me. So that passion and love for our culture and the passion for rooting for the against the South American women, no disrespect, just the way it is. And so that competitive nature that she instilled in us, and just everything she's given us, that never goes away, regardless of her memory loss. And so I step into Thanksgiving, sanguine a little bit because of her reality and that current reality, but really thankful for the fact that regardless, all the love and all the blessings she shared with me, I carry with me day to day. And so I just wanted to share that reflection as part of our overall Thanksgiving, the approach to Thanksgiving and the holidays, because I know for a lot of you, it could be a real sad time because of people that we lost and just other personal circumstances, and feeling like you don't have the network that you used to have and the support system you used to have. And so I just, they're always going to be there with you, and all the blessings and all the gifts that they gave you are always going to be with you. So just kind of, just a way to think about it, and the way that gives me a little comfort as we approach Thanksgiving with our loved ones, including my dear mother. Yo la bendiga, mommy. You know how much I love you. And you know, we while I can be really sad, um our loved ones don't want us to be sad. The people that care about us the most. And so continue to keep all those things in your heart. We're going to take a quick break. I want to actually give a shout out. We're going to see we're going to talk for a moment about this segment show sponsor, the Latin Podcast Awards, our great friends at the Latino Oscars of the Latin podcast world. So I'm going to talk about that for a moment. Then we come back, hear about our political give you some political updates, including my foray into my latest statement as it relates to Univision, the media powerhouse in the Latino community, Spanish language media world, playing footsies with former President Donald Trump. So we're going to hear a little bit more about the Latin Podcast Awards, and we come back more on a found in translation segment of Bomba Life. Impressive piece of hardware I have here,
look
Charlie.
at that. Is quite impressive.
Brother, no FOMO right here. You got to work real hard to get one of these. I want to shout out our great friend and our newest sponsor, Felix Montelada of the Latin Podcast Awards. Charlie, this is like the Oscars for Latino podcasters all over the country, all over Latin America, all over the world. And we were blessed to win the 2022 award for Best Video Podcast. So, that's Charlie, amazing. I know it's hard I know you're a big podcast guy like all of us. And having a resource and understanding that there's actually culturally competent podcast content out there, I know is like a real great value.
Absolutely. Like I tuned into your podcast. Although it's funny, I found your podcast before I met you. So just so you know. Cool. So it was cool when I finally met you. Yeah, your podcast, I listen to Man Enough is another one that I like. I think that it's trying to break down the stereotype of having to feel or feeling less because you emote your emotions correctly.
Yeah, culturally competent content and particularly in language. The Latin Podcast Awards really gives you a breakdown of the best. If you want to find out what's going on in Uruguay or Spanish language content about mental health, just any category of interest you have related to the Latino community, you got to check out LatinPodcastAwards.com, LatinPodcastAwards.com. They just released on YouTube and online their 2023 award show, which was a very professionally done show. So I encourage everyone to check out Latin Podcast on social media and LatinPodcastAwards.com so you can watch the 2023 show. And also, if you're a Latino podcaster out there, and I encourage you, Charles, to get more involved in the podcast game. You have such a powerful message. You can also submit your podcast to be considered for the 2024 awards. Nice. So follow Latin Podcast Awards on social media and follow LatinPodcastAwards.com. And maybe one day, if you work hard enough, you can get one of these bad boys. So.
Got to work pretty hard.
Welcome back to Bomba Live, the show you've been waiting for. Thank you so much to our wonderful sponsor, the Latin Podcast Awards. Definitely check out what's happening in the Latino podcast space. Their 2023 award already up on YouTube, so you can check out who are the winners from this year's Latin Podcast Awards. On this Found in Translation segment, I wanted to give people an update on what's happening with this situation with former President Trump and Univision. You may or may not have seen that recently Trump appeared on Univision, not on like a Sunday talk show with Jorge Ramos, not on a debate because he didn't go to the debates. And Univision was actually part of the last Republican debate, which was fine, which is what they're supposed to do. We're supposed to, and Elia Calderon, shout out to her, actually at the last Republican debate she was a part of, which was debate 2, I believe, not too long ago, asked some very real good questions. Actually was the only real journalist in the space, and actually the far right wing gave her backlash because she was doing her job as an Afro-Latina. So, but nevertheless, Univision recently didn't do kind of the formal, political interviews. They literally they blocked off 10 p.m. East Coast prime time, which is like the top time slot during the week for Univision. And básicamente gave him essentially a 1-hour infomercial. The reporter, Enrique Acevedo, very softball questions, didn't challenge him on anything, didn't fact him on Trump on anything. A full hour, fam, of this. The Spanish translations was kind of sanitized versions of his answers, so people weren't really getting the real thing he was saying if you didn't know English. And, it basically was and they canceled ads that President Biden campaign had bought during that hour. So kind of breaking all the rules and just sort of unprecedented access, not just to any politician, which would be questionable, but someone that has laid out a very clear anti-Latino, anti-immigrant, authoritarian agenda, si gana next year. And so I'm proud to report to y'all, and there's a lot of shakiness going on there with, if you dig into it, Televisa, which is a Mexican media company, bought like 40-something% of Univision a few years ago. They were known in Mexico to, kind of play footsies with Mexican politicians and kind of have this real cozy, uncomfortable, propagandish relationship with political figures in Mexico and in Latin America. So, this is all real troubling stuff. Jared Kushner's in this conversation. The executives of Univision were physically present at the interview at Mar-a-Lago. They let him do it there. Like, it's very, very shaky stuff. And so I'm proud to report, as the executive director of the Unidos US Action Fund, we were very proud to sign on to a letter that our great friends at America's Voice, which is a kind of our go-to organization for messaging related to immigration issues in our space, led a letter that over 90 community organizations have signed. And as you can see on the screen, if you're watching the YouTube version of the show, this was a tweet that I sent out recently that laid out our support, not only for this letter, but calling on Univision to tighten up their journalistic game and really provide Latinos balanced, as I state in my tweet, provide our community balanced and factual information about political candidates and just leading up to, and the political issues impact leading up to the 2024 elections. So I will put in the YouTube notes, and we will continue to share on social media the content of the letter. And our parent organization, Unidos US, led by our president and CEO, Janet Murguia, have actually requested, along with other 501c3 national organizations, a meeting with Univision CEO Wade Davis and other top senior Univision executives, so we can address this issue and ask some very, pertinent questions as to why they provided not just any political figure, which would be one thing, but this political figure that has a blatant anti-Latino agenda, an anti-immigrant agenda. I mean, he wants to put us in concentration camps, this guy, literally internment camps, and deport millions upon millions of people that are contributing to our economy and a part of our families. Unfed, this sort of unprecedented access and unquestioned access to our community. So more to come on that. I'll continue to update people on if Univision responds, if we get meetings, and what's sort of the outcome of this really troubling situation. And it really speaks to how we have to continue to be vigilant to make sure that our community has accurate information about what's going on. And so I would encourage people to watch, to check out. And again, we'll put the link in the note. Julio and Varela put a very good article out, kind of laying out how this interview really tries to pit Latinos against each other. And Trump, throughout the interview, and I encourage people to read the English language transcript online, which again we'll put links in the YouTube in the show notes for this show. How he really, first of all, panders to us. Oh, you guys are wonderful, especially the ones that work so much. And Latinos really take pride in being workers. Latinos that are in law enforcement, and the good Latinos, the ones that lock other Latinos up, and the ones, the real successful ones that work hard, not like you other lazy ones, and the ones that have your papers. And so there's kind of like this pandering element, but also, honestly, some lessons the Biden campaign can learn around how to sort of speak to Latinos around, the importance to us around security issues, and honoring our entrepreneurial spirit and kind of our place in society. Now, Trump's full of it when he does it. Trump is patronizing when he does it. Trump is dividing us when he does it, but he's doing it. And so Biden and Democrats need to take, believe it or not, need to take a few lessons that you can glean sort of within a whole lot of nonsense in that transcript, and just also shows that people are not people haven't seen a lot of Trump, and he's not. You're going to see that he's even more unhinged and not communicating as well as he did even 3-4 years ago. He's getting up there, and he's got some issues. But as we've seen from polling, Latinos, because of the overall sour mood of the country, this Israel, from sort of the left perspective of the Latino community, this Israel-Hamas conflict is really, and how the U.S. has approached this conflict has really soured younger Latinos and more progressive Latinos in this administration. So there's lots of challenges. Now, will those people go to Trump? I don't think so. But at the same time, the polling suggests that, while Trump certainly seems to have a ceiling between third-party candidates, between the potential of youth voters and other people that are part of the traditional Democratic and Biden coalition just staying home next year, there's definitely a possibility Trump could win next year, or another Republican candidate. So there's lots of factors, and I'll finish the Found Translation segment with just a couple words on that, because a good friend of mine, the Cuban lad Nissan Liam, I hope he doesn't mind me shouting him out, DM'd me the other day and said, "Hey Ralph, hey Ray, ¿qué va a pasar next year? Like, what do you think will happen?" And the first thing I could say is that I think the biggest thing the first thing I answered him was, so many things will change in 11 months. Just our history accelerates so quickly now. And just think about it. 7 weeks ago, October 7th in Israel hadn't happened, where Hamas, shamefully killed those people. And, we're happy to see that it appears some hostages will be released in the coming hours. And all those innocent lives in Palestine hadn't been killed. And all this global tension between that really has so many underlying tones around race, somewhat religion, but I think honestly more race and colonialism than anything. And so not just people in the United States, but people of color all over the world are reacting to, this, they're not being red lines. And well, if a bunch of brown people have to die, then so be it. Seemingly attitude by, some would argue, well, certainly is the leadership of Israel, and the general approach, the perception of how the United States, with funding and general support of the government, has perceived this. But nevertheless, there's lots that are going to happen. Trump, you're going to see more of Trump, and it ain't going to be pretty, fam. You're going to understand more of what he's preaching now, which is a different tune than 2016, even 2020. He's literally laying out blueprints around not just this cracking down on unprecedented crackdown on immigrants, but this crackdown on authoritarians. Your loved ones that have federal jobs may lose them, because he's looking to replace basically the federal government employee base with his minions. And so lots and lots of dangerous stuff that continues to take place. And as well, the damage that's already been done around abortion, affirmative action, the attack on voting rights, that would just be accelerated in a potential Trump administration. So that's going to be more in front and center than it's been in an international debate next year. The trials, he could be convicted. He could be put in jail. your gas price could go down some more. Well, you know, and the flip side, the economy could take a more of a nosedive. And there's so many things, you know, Biden could, you know, have health issues. There's lots of things that the Middle East could get worse. So there's lots of factors. So it's hard to kind of put my finger on it. But I think ultimately the challenge for Biden and the Democrats will be to address some of the real concerns that our community has, particularly in the Latino community, around the economy, around how, as Cardi B has in her way shared, you know, how this administration is prioritizing our communities, in our cities, and our young people and our working people that are trying to get ahead and are working harder than ever in some degree, but are not feeling like they're getting ahead because of the costs of everything, and the difficulty in buying a home, and some of the other challenges that's impacting working and middle class people in this country day to day, and addressing this underlying concern that, you know, the underlying dynamics, what's going on in the Middle East, is showing that, you know, the unevenness of how we approach these issues as it relates to race, and that's not going to go away with a couple campaign ads. There's got to be some real reckoning, some real conversation, engagement, and honestly, there also has to be a promotion of some of the movement that this administration has done. I mean, you know, this negotiation with hostages, this 5-day pause. You know, while many of us are disillusioned by the rhetoric of the administration, it seems pretty clear to me that behind the scenes they're looking to have a more balanced approach, and are not happy that of the violent the violence that's taking place on both sides of that border in the Middle East. So I don't know what's going to happen, but that gives you kind of a sense of the unpredictability, but some of the fundamentals that we have going into the 2024 election. The good news from a Democratic perspective is when you poll people around the country, especially Latinos, they're with us on the issues. And, you know, Latinos generally have a certain set of beliefs. If you look at what the Democrats are doing, they're generally doing those things or trying to do those things. The challenge is communicating that in a way that people feel it's connected to their day-to-day lives. We're going to take a very quick break and then come back with a quick Bomba Live sports segment. Can we have the Ricky Martin picture? We got to show it. Come on, fam. We got to show it. All right, Dios mío, look at that. Come on. Ricky and Betty, tell us this story, my friend.
Ricky Martin, Ruben. Actually, Sweet Sensation was on tour with Menudo for a minute. Okay. Cover Girls were on tour. It was Cover Girls, Sweet Sensation, Menudo at the time. This is right before Ricky left the group. That's Ruben right next to him, I believe. Yeah. So, yeah, we had so much fun being on tour with Menudo. Now, meanwhile, talk about surreal. I was 14 years old with my best friend from across the street, Sonia, you know, scoping out all the hotels that Menudo was in because I was a big Menudo fan. I love Menudo. I still love Menudo. I can sing.
Welcome back to Bomba Live. That was the legendary freestyle entertainer, Betty D from Sweet Sensation, one of our Bomba Live collaborators. Talk about a bucket list moment. Betty D on Bomba Live, talk about her interaction, her touring with Menudo. Talk about all of our Puerto Rican musical traditions coming together in a great way. Talk about 80s, 90s flashback stuff. On this final edition of the Thanksgiving episode of Bomba Live, the show you've been waiting for, I just wanted to talk about how thankful I am for the sports in our life. And I'm such a big sports fan. And if you know me as a Philadelphia sports fan, we're kind of having a bit of a golden era. All of our teams are very good. We have some fantastic players. We don't get to the World Series and we're mad about it because we're so good. The top team in the NFL, the Philadelphia Eagles. And I just want to say how thankful I am for Jalen Hurts. You know, I mean, ever since I was a little kid, the Philadelphia Eagles, we've never really had like a Hall of Fame quarterback, to be honest with you. I mean, Roman Gabriel, or, you know, we in the 50s, maybe in the 60s, but we, you know, from Randall to Don McNabb, the list, Michael Vick, good players, really good players, all-star players, all Pro Bowlers, but not Hall of Famers. And this gentleman is just Jalen Hurts is just a winner beyond the statistics, beyond how much he's improved. His attitude on and off the field is just, you know, it's just. It took me 40 years to have a quarterback like this. And I'm just so happy to have him. Wanted to rest in peace, Willie Hernandez. Willie Hernandez was a great Puerto Rican baseball player, the only Puerto Rican. 1984 won both the Cy Young and the MVP. I think he's the only Puerto Rican pitcher to ever win a Cy Young award. Died tragically at 69 years old in Puerto Rico, the Aguada, Puerto Rico. Willie Hernandez was a trailblazer for Latino baseball. And, speaking of baseball, if you're looking to get a baseball fix over the winter, I encourage you to check out, you can find it on YouTube. And, if you Google, you can find various streaming services. The winter leagues are happening all over Latin America. Puerto Rico, my home, Caguas Criollos, the Dominican League, the Titans of the Caribbean, the two top teams just played a weekend series at Citi Field in New York. So if you're looking to find some Latino baseball con sabor hispano, check out the winter leagues on social media. And I want to thank all of you for joining the Thanksgiving episode of Bomba Live, the show you've been waiting for. Continue to follow Bomba Live on YouTube and social media. And very soon our audio podcast feed will be up. Thank you. Have a blessed Thanksgiving and con Bomba.